At exactly 1 o'clock in the morning, the porch light outside my small house in Riverton, Arizona flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the dry yard. The desert night was quiet except for the distant roar of motorcycles racing down the highway. I had just drifted into sleep when the sound came, violent, uneven pounding on my front door. This wasn't a polite knock. It was panic. "Mom, please, open the door." My heart stopped. I recognized the voice instantly. Alyssa, my daughter. I rushed to the door and unlocked it. Before I could say a word, she collapsed into my arms. Her lower lip was split open, blood dried at the corner. One eye was swollen nearly shut. Her hands clutched her stomach like she was holding herself together by force. I didn't think. I reacted. I carried her inside, laid her gently on the couch, and grabbed the nearest blanket to cover her trembling body. Only then did I look up and see my police uniform hanging neatly in the hallway, pressed, ready, waiting. That night, I wasn't just a mother. I was also a police officer. And both roles were about to collide. My name is Rebecca Nolan. I've been a patrol sergeant in Riverton for over 20 years. This town is small, the kind where rumors move faster than dust storms and secrets never stay buried long. Alyssa is 26. She grew up fearless, climbing trees, singing loudly to the radio, promising she'd always find her way home. Recently, she'd grown quieter, distant. I told myself it was adulthood. I wanted to believe she was okay. I was wrong. As I cleaned the blood from her lip with a damp towel, I could feel something deeper than bruises had broken inside her long before she reached my door. I called the emergency room. "Dr. Aisha Khan, it's Rebecca. Get a bed ready. I'm bringing my daughter." While we waited for a cab, Alyssa's phone buzzed again and again on the table. The screen lit up with missed calls and messages, from Derek Walsh, her husband. One message froze my blood: "Don't say anything if you want to keep what's yours." I reached for the phone, but Alyssa grabbed it back, her hands shaking. "Mom, please, don't. He'll make it worse." I squeezed her hand instead. "I'm here. You're safe now." But inside, I made a silent promise. This night would be documented. Every mark. Every message. Every lie. This was only the beginning. The ride to Riverton General felt longer than it was. The cab's headlights cut through the dark highway while Alyssa leaned against me, her breathing shallow and uneven. I kept one arm wrapped tightly around her, afraid that if I let go, she might fall apart completely. When we reached the emergency room, the harsh fluorescent lights sliced through the night. Dr. Aisha Khan was already waiting. Her eyes scanned Alyssa's face, then the way she protected her side with one arm. She didn't ask questions. She just acted. "Let's get her in a room," she said firmly. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency, helping Alyssa onto the exam bed. They checked her vitals, carefully lifted her blouse, and then stopped cold. A dark bruise spread across her abdomen, deep purple and angry. Dr. Khan's jaw tightened. She ordered X-rays and a CT scan immediately. As machines hummed around us, I leaned close to the charge nurse. "I need copies of everything," I said quietly. "Photos. Notes. Reports." She nodded without hesitation. She'd seen this before. While Alyssa was prepped, she gripped my hand. "Mom, don't let him find me." I leaned close, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "He won't. Not while I'm breathing." By sunrise, we left the hospital with more than discharge papers. We had imaging results, medical photographs, and a sealed folder labeled evidence. This wasn't just treatment, it was testimony. Back home, the early morning sun stretched across the street. As I stepped onto the porch, my neighbor Mrs. Eleanor Finch paused mid-sweep and hurried over. "Rebecca, I heard crying last night. Is everything all right?" I hesitated, then told her the truth in a low voice. It was Alyssa. Derek hurt her. Her face hardened. "That man is dangerous," she muttered. Then her eyes widened. "My porch camera records everything. It might have caught her coming in." We watched the footage together. There was Alyssa, 10:02 a.m., knocking weakly, her voice barely holding together. I swallowed hard. "Can you send me a copy?" She squeezed my hand. "I'll testify if I have to." Inside, I saved the video onto an encrypted drive. For the first time since Alyssa knocked on my door, I felt the balance shift. Proof was forming. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Lucas Grant, a clerk from the county records office. "Rebecca," he said quietly, "your name and Alyssa's just showed up on a land transfer file. Something feels off." My stomach tightened. "What transfer?" He hesitated. "The paperwork says Alyssa signed her property over to Vanessa Moore. But the signatures don't match, and the notary stamp wasn't even active that day." "The land." "My father's land. The inheritance Alyssa never meant to give away." I grabbed my keys. "I'm coming in." As I drove, one truth became painfully clear. This wasn't just about bruises anymore. Someone was trying to steal her future. The county records office smelled of old paper and dust, the kind of place where secrets hid quietly in filing cabinets. Lucas Grant was waiting for me when I arrived. He didn't smile. That alone told me how serious this was. He led me into a small back office and slid a folder across the desk. "This came in 2 days ago," he said. "Filed by Derek Walsh himself. He told the staff you authorized it because you were too busy to come in." My jaw tightened. Inside the folder was a deed transfer. The land my father had left to Alyssa, now signed over to Vanessa Moore. The signatures were shaky, unnatural. Alyssa's name didn't look like hers. And mine. It looked like someone had tried to copy it from memory. "This is a forgery," I said flatly. Lucas nodded. "And the notary stamp?" The notary wasn't even working that day. I asked for certified copies of everything, every page, every stamp, every log entry. Lucas hesitated before leaning closer. "Be careful," he whispered. "Someone inside helped fast-track this." That sent a chill down my spine. I left the office with the file pressed tight against my chest. My father had worked his whole life for that land. Derek wasn't just abusing my daughter, he was trying to erase her future. There was only one place left to go. Mallee Trading Post. Derek's pawn shop sat on the edge of town, a grimy building that smelled of oil and stale smoke. 2 men lounged near the counter when I walked in. One smirked. "Well, if it isn't the mother-in-law." I ignored him and walked straight into the back office. Derek sat behind a battered desk, counting cash. He looked up and grinned. "Sergeant Nolan," he said. "Here to nag, or here to buy?" I dropped the folder onto his desk and slid it forward. Inside were Alyssa's medical photos, ER reports, Mrs. Finch's video stills, the forged deed. His grin flickered, just for a second. "And what do you expect me to do with this?" he scoffed. "I've got better lawyers than you." I met his eyes. "I don't expect you to do anything. The court will." He leaned forward, his voice sharp. That girl of yours needed discipline. Don't think your badge will always protect you. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't move. I gathered the folder and stood. From now on, I said calmly, it's not your rules. It's the law. I walked out without looking back. By the end of the week, Riverton was buzzing. At the farmer's market, I heard whispers. She's just abusing her badge. Girls exaggerate. She probably made it up. Each word stung, but I kept walking. That night, an unmarked envelope waited under my door. Inside was a note written in uneven ink. Shut up, or you'll lose your daughter. My hands shook, not from fear, but rage. I slipped the note into the evidence folder. Then I made the call. Captain Stephen Brooks, I said, I need protection. This just turned dangerous. The war was no longer quiet. And it was far from over. Captain Stephen Brooks didn't interrupt as I explained everything, the hospital records, the forged deed, the threats. When I finished, the line was silent for a moment. Rebecca, he finally said, you're too close to this. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. I'll assign extra patrols near Eleanor Finch's house. Keep every detail documented. Alyssa wasn't staying with me anymore. Not after the note. She was safer at Eleanor's place, where patrol cars would pass by regularly and cameras watched every angle. That night, I barely slept. Rumors spread faster than facts. By morning, Riverton had already decided its version of the truth. At the diner, I heard it plainly. She's just a cop using her badge. If it were real, why wait so long? I didn't argue. I took notes. Because lies leave patterns. The case was growing, but something was missing. Derek was slippery. He always had someone else doing his dirty work. To break this wide open, I needed someone from inside his circle. That someone was Vanessa Moore. I started quietly asking questions. It didn't take long to learn she spent most evenings at the Silver Spur, a dim bar on Hidalgo Street. She drank alone. That told me more than any rumor. Thursday night, I wore an old jacket and a baseball cap, nothing that screamed police. I sat in a corner booth and waited. Around 10, Vanessa walked in wearing a red dress, confidence stitched tightly over fear. She ordered a drink, hands shaking just enough to notice. I slid into the booth across from her and placed an envelope on the table. Inside, copies of the forged land deed, her name tied directly to it, public records of her debts. He can't protect you, I said quietly. But the truth might. She laughed at first. Then she looked closer. The color drained from her face. He promised me land, she whispered. A way out. He said Alyssa would never fight back. He lied, I said. Vanessa swallowed hard. What happens if I talk? You get a chance to walk away clean. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she nodded. I'll testify, she said. But I need protection. That night, I contacted Henry Collins, the attorney I trusted. By morning, we were sitting in his office, evidence spread across a heavy oak table. Medical records. Video footage. Threatening notes. The forged deed. Vanessa's sworn statement. Piece by piece, it became unbreakable. Henry looked up at me. This is strong. But we need restraining orders, now. That afternoon, Judge Harold Whitman signed emergency protection orders. Derek was barred from contacting Alyssa or Vanessa. Captain Brooks arranged secure housing. For the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because the danger was gone, but because the truth finally had teeth. The courthouse was already packed when we arrived. Wooden benches groaned under the weight of neighbors, co-workers, and strangers who had come to witness what River Tun had been whispering about for weeks. Alyssa sat beside me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered, but there was something new in her posture, resolve. When Judge Harold Whitman entered, the room fell silent. Henry Collins stood first. Your Honor, this case is not built on rumor. It is built on records, injuries, and evidence that speaks for itself. He began with the medical files. Dr. Aisha Khan took the stand and explained Alyssa's injuries, why the bruising pattern couldn't come from a simple fall. Her testimony was calm, clinical, and devastating. Next came the video. The screen flickered to life, showing Alyssa at 10:02 a.m., knocking weakly at my door. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. No one spoke. Then came the messages. Don't open your mouth if you want to keep everything. Phone records confirmed the sender. Derek shifted in his seat. Lucas Grant testified next, pointing out the forged signatures and the invalid notary stamp. The land transfer collapsed under its own weight. Then Vanessa Moore took the stand. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. He promised me land if I signed. He said Alyssa would never fight back. Derek jumped to his feet. You traitor. The gavel slammed. Order. Judge Whitman barked. When it was my turn, I stood in uniform. I am a police officer, I said. But today I'm here as a mother. The man who hurt my daughter and forged our names is not a protector. He is an abuser. Paul Turner, Derek's attorney, tried to twist the story, suggesting bias, manipulation, extortion. But facts don't bend. When Henry finished, the courtroom was silent. Judge Whitman returned after a long pause. Protective order granted. The forged deed is nullified. All of Derek Walsh's assets are frozen pending investigation. A breath escaped Alyssa's chest. Two deputies stepped forward. The click of handcuffs echoed through the room. For the first time, Derek looked afraid. I squeezed Alyssa's hand. Justice hadn't erased her pain, but it had opened the door to safety. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, in the space between breaths. In the weeks after the hearing, life didn't snap back into place. Healing never works that way. Alyssa slept in short stretches, her body jolting awake from nightmares where Derek was still at the door. Some nights she cried without words. Other nights she sat upright, eyes wide, listening for sounds that weren't there. Each time, I was there. I'd sit beside her bed, holding her hand until her breathing slowed. I learned quickly that fear doesn't leave all at once, it loosens its grip inch by inch. At Henry Collins's recommendation, Alyssa began therapy with Dr. Monica Reed. Twice a week, she spoke about the things she had buried, how she'd learned to stay quiet, how silence felt safer than speaking, how shame had wrapped itself around her voice. Dr. Reed taught her grounding exercises. Name 5 things you can see. 4 things you can touch. 3 things you can hear. Small steps. Powerful ones. Some days were harder than others. But then, small victories appeared. Alyssa walked to the store alone without scanning every doorway. She cooked dinner and hummed an old song she used to love. One afternoon, I heard her laugh, and it caught me so off guard I had to turn away before she saw the tears. As for me, I carried the case into my patrols. Every call felt heavier. Every woman who hesitated before speaking reminded me of Alyssa on my porch at 1 a.m. I started keeping resource cards in my pocket, numbers for shelters, counselors, legal aid. Sometimes all a person needed was to know someone would listen. Rumors didn't disappear overnight. Some people still whispered. Others avoided eye contact. But the truth had a way of standing firm. The land was returned. Derek remained under investigation. And the silence he relied on was gone. One evening, Alyssa sat beside me on the porch, the desert sky turning gold. I thought I was weak, she said quietly. But I wasn't. I was surviving. I squeezed her hand. And now, I said, you're healing. That night, I realized something important. This wasn't just about stopping one man. It was about reminding a town, and maybe even myself, that the law is meant to protect the vulnerable, even when the threat sits at your own family table. When I look back at that night, I don't see a victory. I see a door. A door my daughter had the courage to knock on when everything inside had told her to stay quiet. If you're hearing this and parts of Alyssa's story feel familiar, I want you to know something important. There are steps you can take, even when fear makes everything feel impossible. First, if you are in immediate danger, call emergency services. Your safety comes before pride, before explanations, before fear of being judged. Second, document everything. Take photos of injuries with a phone that records dates and times. Save threatening texts, voicemails, or messages. Back them up to a cloud account or an external drive. What feels small today can become powerful evidence tomorrow. Third, seek medical care. Ask for printed discharge papers. Make sure every injury is clearly documented. Hospitals often take photos, request copies or reference numbers. Medical records speak when fear cannot. Fourth, check public records. If you suspect financial abuse or fraud, request certified copies of deeds, contracts, or transfers. Compare signatures. Notary logs often reveal lies written in ink. And finally, reach out for support. Hotlines, advocacy groups, shelters, and legal aid exist for a reason. You don't have to walk this road alone, even if it feels that way right now. Healing doesn't move in straight lines. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days, the weight will return. That doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human. Alyssa still has difficult nights. But she also has mornings filled with sunlight, music, and laughter she thought she'd lost forever. As for me, every time I put on my uniform, I remember why I chose this job. Not for power. Not for control. But to stand between harm and those who need protection most, even when the danger wears a familiar face. Silence only serves those who hurt others. Speaking up, however shaky, opens the door to safety. If this story resonated with you, share it. Leave a comment with the city you're watching from. Someone else might read your words and realize they are not alone. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it begins with a quiet knock at 1 a.m. and the courage to answer.